Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Listen, John Heyman just dropped some major updates about the Mets, and Danny Abriano over at SNY gave us his prediction on what this team needs to do as we roll into January. The frustration level among Mets fans is through the roof right now, and honestly, I get it. Not much has happened beyond the Devin Williams trade, which nobody saw coming as our biggest move. We've watched Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso, and Edwin Diaz all leave. The core is completely gone, but maybe that's actually a good thing when you step back from the emotion of it all. David Stearns has to have some kind of plan here. Whether you believe in him or not is a different conversation entirely. The facts are simple, though. We still have a top-tier bullpen. When you look at free agency and potential trade targets, there are still plenty of quality players available. Cody Bellinger is out there. Kyle Tucker is still unsigned. Framber Valdez could be had. Ranger Suarez is another option. The market isn't empty by any means. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. These players aren't going to win us a championship. I understand that perspective, but the farm system is absolutely stacked right now. There was a graphic that came out recently about Carson Benj showing his swing rate, his low strikeout rate, and his elite exit velocity. There's a reason the Mets have kept this kid untouchable in trade discussions. That's why I keep saying go out and get Kyle Tucker, because you might already have the next Kyle Tucker developing in your minor league system. Let me get into some notes from John Heyman, who did a live stream breaking down the Mets and what they could be doing. First player I want to discuss is Kazuma Okamoto. A lot of people talked about him this offseason. I've always said I'm not the biggest fan. I understand he's a Gold Glove caliber defender at first base, but I don't really see him as a fit for the Mets. Everyone keeps pointing out his great glove and the home runs he hit in Japan. My biggest issue has always been simple. There's a reason he's 29 years old and just now coming over to the major leagues. If you're truly that talented, you're over here at 25, 26, 27, like Shota Imanaga was. Here are Heyman's notes on Okamoto. They looked at him initially, but the teams that are seriously interested do not include the New York Mets. So the Mets are out on Okamoto, which I'm completely fine with. I think he's going to get a 4 to 5 year deal somewhere. A lot of people are noticing the Japanese market this year is extremely suppressed compared to previous years. There's no Yoshinobu Yamamoto getting a 12-year deal. There's no Shohei Ohtani situation. The market dynamics are just completely different. Heyman also spoke briefly about Cody Bellinger, a player we've been talking about constantly because of his versatility. I said this last week, and I'm no insider, but from everything I was hearing, Bellinger's market doesn't look like it's shaping up to be that 7 or 8 year deal he supposedly wants. Heyman touched on exactly that. Here's his first quote on Bellinger. With the Mets, pitching has to be their number one priority. They're in on Bellinger, but won't say it's very likely compared to the Yankees. The worst offseasons currently belong to the Mets, and the Yankees split between them. That could change really quickly, though. What Heyman seems to be saying about the Yankees is that if they retain Bellinger, they're basically bringing back the same team minus Devin Williams at this point. Maybe you get Garrett Cole back from injury, but that's essentially where they stand. Everything I'm hearing indicates the Mets are more interested in Bellinger than Tucker, but that could absolutely change. We all know we need a monster bat in this lineup. Heyman also discussed Mason Miller, or certainly a guy the Mets could use. From a couple people I've spoken with, it looks like that possibility has fallen by the wayside. I'm not saying a trade with the Athletics won't happen eventually, but they want an astronomical return when it comes to Mason Miller. Then there's this additional note on Bellinger. They're currently looking at years for his contract. Bellinger, you would think, could potentially get a 7-year deal, but he may have to settle for 6. This verifies what I've been hearing. The deals just aren't out there for him at the numbers he was expecting. Could it be 6 years at $30 million per? I highly doubt that too. I think he's going to land somewhere in the $26 to $28 million range, which is still a very good contract for him. You can't say it's not. That's everything from Heyman's updates. Now I want to switch over to Danny Abriano's article discussing the Mets and their offseason plans. Abriano has a timeline laid out here. Japanese ace Roki Sasaki's posting window closes this week on January 2nd, just a few days away. He's supposedly hosting teams this week for final meetings. His potential deal with a major league club must be official by then, which I think will happen. He has too much talent not to be signed. With the clock ticking, Sasaki is expected to continue meeting with interested teams. SNY insider Andy Martino reported earlier this offseason that the Mets would be in on Sasaki, but didn't expect it to be a full-tilt pursuit like it was with Yamamoto. Obviously, Yamamoto was coming over 2 years younger, more established, with a higher strikeout rate. I like Sasaki, but from everyone I've talked to and looking at projections, his numbers project to something like a 4.5 ERA. I'm not saying that will happen because I saw similar projections for Kodai Senga, but Sasaki is 27 and dominant in Japan. It's a different league here, though. Sasaki has been outspoken about his desire to beat the Dodgers, not join them. His market remains somewhat mysterious. Jack Curry from YES Network reported last week the Yankees weren't expected to sign him, which isn't surprising since they're already loaded with pitching. Sasaki pitched 163 and two-thirds innings over 24 starts last season with a 1.92 ERA and a .89 WHIP, while allowing 101 hits and striking out 178 batters. That's an excellent strikeout rate for Japan. It will likely come down somewhat in the majors. Over 8 seasons pitching in NPB, Sasaki has a 3.15 ERA and 1.26 WHIP. He's reached another level over the last 4 seasons, though. His breaking pitches are more refined, posting ERAs of 2.04, 2.45, 2.34, and 1.92. His stuff is considered plus across the board. He has a fastball that sits mid-90s and can reach 99, kind of like Senga. He also features a splitter, slider, and cutter. The Mets may have lost a competitor in the Luis Robert trade sweepstakes. The Reds could potentially be out of the mix with the White Sox. I'm still not interested in Robert personally. I know many of you are, and I understand people want to point to his last 2 months when he posted an 800-plus OPS. That's fine. I'm not a fan of change of scenery guys, especially ones making $20 million who will cost a boatload of prospects. There's a reason he hasn't been moved yet. Count the Mets along with the San Francisco Giants and Baltimore Orioles among teams that have reportedly met with starting pitcher Framber Valdez, another guy we've discussed extensively. I've seen projections of 4 to 5 years at around $150 million. No thanks at those numbers. He's 32 years old going into his 33rd season. Would I take him on a short-term deal for 2 or 3 years? Maybe. But I'm terrified of another Sean Manaea situation. I know Valdez is way more established than Manaea ever was, but the facts are facts. Valdez has a ton of miles on his arm from pitching deep into the postseason practically every single year with Houston. We can't forget we just completely overhauled the clubhouse because we supposedly needed to change the entire culture. Now we're going to bring in a guy who intentionally threw at his own catcher. I'm not totally sold on that. Is he a frontline ace where you know exactly what you're getting? Maybe a couple years ago. This past year, he took a step back. Is he going to be better at age 33? You might get 1 or 2 good seasons, but if he's signing for 4 or 5 years, taking him through 37 years old, I'm not convinced that's smart business. New York's interest in the left-hander has been a topic of constant speculation throughout the winter. Earlier this month, Mark Feinsand said the Mets were among favorites to sign Valdez. However, it's also been reported the Mets are reluctant to hand out long-term offers except to absolute elite pitchers. Valdez is not an elite pitcher at this stage. He pitched to a 3.66 ERA last season, which was actually worse than Clay Holmes, with a 1.245 WHIP over 31 starts and 192 innings. Over the past 4 seasons, he's been a dependable starter for Houston, tossing 767 and two-thirds innings across 121 starts with a 3.21 ERA. That's solid production, no question. Ketel Marte has been a buzzy name in the trade market, with numerous teams expressing interest in the 3-time All-Star. The Mets have thrown their name into the mix after trading Jeff McNeil. How Marte could fit into New York's roster is a big question, and whether Arizona would actually move him is another question entirely. Ken Rosenthal said teams most likely won't get him unless they offer young pitchers in return. That's why you keep seeing the same names in every trade speculation. Jonah Tong, Noah McGlenn, Jack Wenninger, Jonathan Santucci. The same prospects keep appearing in these rumors. The Mets have reportedly prioritized adding a right-handed bat. One option is free agent outfielder Austin Hayes, who the Mets checked in on according to reports. He crushed left-handed pitching last year with an .819 OPS, 25 home runs, and 88 RBIs against southpaws. But look at his numbers against righties. Absolutely terrible. That's why he's not getting paid like an everyday player. Obviously, everyone knows about the Luis Robert speculation. I'm not a big fan, as I've told you before. Bob Nightingale reported the Mets and White Sox engaged in trade talks, but I'm not totally sure that's accurate. Bob has swung and missed on an absolute ton this offseason. I'm not sure I consider him a totally reliable source at this point. The timeline is there for moves to happen. Hopefully we get some news over the next couple days. The offseason isn't over. There are still quality players available who could significantly improve this roster. David Stearns needs to execute on his vision and show Mets fans this plan leads somewhere beyond just cutting payroll and hoping prospects develop on schedule.